Hello, this is Dan and we're in part 2 of our tentacle rigging process here. And the last part, I think we finished with our finished up with our FK rig. There's still a few things we can do here to make things a little bit better. I always like to make my rigs unbreakable. One of the things I'm doing in both of these FK and IK chains that we're going to make is I am not going to allow any stretching. I'm going to do all that with this intermediate chain at the end. I think that's going to give us enough functionality down there, and so in order to just make things so we can actually start breaking things here, if we start scaling. Scaling is one of those things you have to really be mindful of when you're creating a rig on what you allow your animators to scale. So basically I'm just going to make this so the animators can't scale anything. Currently, if I have these selected, I can actually change their locations, and for this FK chain we actually don't want that. We want them to keep everything lock those locations so we can't accidentally move them around. And also we want to not allow them to scale anything from that. Like you've seen the first part of my rig, I was allowing scaling from the tweak bones here, so this would just actually be redundant and it'll actually break things, at least how I'm making this setup right now. So you only need these for rotation. We can actually just lock our scale. Basically, to make everything easy, I'm going to use that copy attributes trick here again. So I've got this bone with the axis locks selected, location is locked, and scale is locked. I'm going to select everything. Oops, make sure I don't have these IK ones selected, and reselect that bone to make it the active object. Control C. I'm going to copy protected transforms, and now I've got everything is locked for location and scale all the way around. These are actually MCH bones, so which our animator never has to manipulate, so we can just lock the rotations of those as well. So if an animator actually gets a hold of one of those bones, they're not going to mess up our rig by accidentally scaling or changing the location or rotation or scale. Alright, one final thing I think is something I can do right now is actually add our custom shapes to this before we move on to our IK. So I actually have custom shapes already made in this scene, so you'll have to make them if you don't. I'm not going to go into how to make that, but what I want to explain is I'm going to put that circular ring here. What I want to have is a wireframe just check and display. Let me do search for WGT. What did I make? FK arm, and you can see that it's making. I put that circular control there. If you didn't have that wireframe option enabled, if I get out of wireframe mode here, basically that would disappear, and that would your bone disappears, and that can freak you out a little bit here. But if that ever happens to you, go to armature panel and just temporarily turn off shapes, and then you can find your bone again. And basically the reason that happened was the shape, this widget WGT FK arm doesn't have any faces in it, so you have to have that wireframe checked. Let's go back, turn back our shapes option back on. So don't freak out if it disappears, but do make sure that you check the option for wireframe. WGT. I'm just gonna do our copy and paste again. I'm gonna do Control C to copy that name. I'm just gonna paste these down all down the line. Check wireframe. Control V to paste it. I'm going to show you another odd thing that's going to happen here. When we start rotating this, you'll notice that these tentacle bones don't rotate with it, and that actually looks really odd. And it's going to look odd for an animator, but there's a trick here we can use. I actually have another custom shape just for those tentacles. And where is it? We've got FK tentacle. I'm going to select that. You can see it's a slightly different shape here. So wireframe enabled. Let me rotate this so I can show you. It's not going with it, but we can actually force, Blender will allow us to display that bone at a different bone with this at field here. So let me select that FK, or the control FK arm 001, control C to copy that, and I want to paste that into this field here. And now wherever it rotates, it's going to display it at that type, even though it's not actually going there. You can see that the relationship line is actually not moving. It's just displaying it at that other bone. So very useful to make things look visually nice sometimes, I guess. I'm just gonna copy this name, wireframe, and we go through here and we just add the shape to everything. Wireframe shape. I'll do that first. Then I'll copy the control to it. So copy that name, paste it at the at field, control C to copy. Copy and paste really could save us a lot of time here, as you can see. Copy and paste. I think I've got one more. There, now it looks much nicer when all this stuff is working together here. So, nice little trick. And I think as far as transform locks, and we've got our custom shapes applied, I think we're pretty much set. One thing we can do additionally is we can start separating some of these bones into our bone layers. Maybe I'll do that at the end, or before, at least before we get to that intermediate layer here. Let's get our IK chain working here. So in pose mode, let me select this last one here. Go to edit mode rather. I'm gonna have to change those bone layers. They're already getting in my way. So let's take all of these. I wanted to type B, not N. I want to select all of these FK bones, and I'm going to move them over to this next layer here. Let me move all of our IK bones to the layer after. And since I'm doing all of this, let me just change our intermediate over here. Alright, now we can toggle these on and off and get them out of our way when we need to. So let's actually turn this one off. Well, let's move our deformation bones to another layer too. Let's move them right directly below here. Move them right there. Alright. Now we can just isolate the chain we're working on. So I'm going to only need 2 extra bones to make our IK bone chain work. I'm going to select the endpoint of this first bone and the tip of this last bone. I'm going to do extrude and Y. And G, I don't need to make them quite so big there. Then I want to do Alt P rather, and just clear their parents. This control needs to be parented to the root, so it's outside of our IK chain, and it can't be parented to any bone within that chain, the IK target. This will be our IK target, so let's just call it CTRL.IK.001, and this is going to be an MCH bone. MCH.IK, what do I want to call it? Let's just call it socket for now, and we want to parent this one to our body bone. Control P, keep offset. So this one to the body bone, our target to our root, and this one will be parented to our socket bone here. Control P, keep offset. First bone on that chain. Now let's set up our constraint. We'll select our target, and then the first or the end bone in that chain. Shift Control C. Let's add our inverse kinematics. We want to configure our constraint. I'm not going to use a pull target, but we do need to change our chain length to 6. There are 6 different segments here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we don't want to include that socket bone. And that is basically one more constraint, and we're going to have a fully working IK chain. So there we go. That is working. All I need to do really is add one more copy rotation constraint. I'm going to add it from this bone to this one, to our socket. Copy rotation. And now when we rotate this bone, we can change the angle of our leg. About as simple as it gets, really. Our IK chain is now done, except for our transform locks. Let's just get all of these bones here. These are MCH bones. Our animators never actually have to touch any of those bones, so we can actually lock everything. And then we'll just use our copy protected transform trick here. Control C, copy protected transforms. All of these are locked from our animator. This is needed for location and rotation, but it's not needed for scale, our target. And this one is a MCH bone, which shouldn't be manipulated by an animator, so we can just lock everything in there. It will be hidden from later. Let's add our custom bone property here, WGT. I think I got IK target, and we are done. We have a working IK chain. Let's go back to our layers here, and let's enable our intermediate chain. Now this is going to be a little bit more involved. Don't get scared away from it. It looks complicated to begin with, but it's not too bad really. I'm going to select this whole chain and do Alt P, clear their appearance. So I want each one of these bones to be separate. You just reselect them, and I want to parent every one of them to the root bone. Control P, keep offset. Now I need to make a couple other sets of bones here. I need to make our tweak parent bone, and then we need to make the tweak controls themselves. So what I'm going to do is select every one of these in that chain. I'm going to go top down view, and I'm going to extrude on the Y. So they're at that exact positions here, and I need to select this last one too and extrude that one on the Y, just so I have 7 tweak parent bones here. Let me just select these tips. These don't have to be quite so big, so I can do G, Y, just downsize them a little bit. Let's make sure that they should all be select them all and parent them to the root. Control P, keep offset, and let's rename them. These will be mch.tweak.prnt for parent.001. And which one did I have selected? I had the wrong one selected. I had root. Let me rename my root back. Whoops. Let's just select one and name it. mch.twk for tweak, mch tweak parent prnt 001. Alright, and I still got that name around. Dot. Alright, there we go. I think I've got it. Now I can copy that across. Now don't worry if this doesn't make sense what these bones are for right now. It will be apparent in a little bit. I want to move them to their own layer. Let's move them to this one. Just isolate that layer. I'm going to do Shift D to duplicate them, and then make sure my pivot point is individual origins. And I'm going to scale up a new set of bones here. Let's go back to wireframe just to make it a little nicer. I'm going to move those to one layer over and enable both those layers, because what I want to do is, well, first let's name these. These are actually going to be the controls. So ctrl dot tweak dot 001. Control C to copy. Just paste this all down the line again. And we should have 7 of them. We have 7 parents and 7 controls. Alright, now we need to enable both of those layers so we have the controls and the parent visible, so we can parent our controls to those parents. Control P, keep offset, so big bone to little bone again. Keep offset all the way down the line. Big one first, then the little one. Alright, now we've got that taken care of. We can actually ignore these now. Let's go back to, let's just turn these off and go back to our regular intermediate MCH INT ARM 001. Let's turn on our IK and FK layers here temporarily. Go back to pose mode. Make sure everything is cleared out. We don't have any odd things going on. I'm actually going to turn off our shapes temporarily because I want to actually see where the bone is. Now this intermediate chain is basically going to switch between copying the rotations of FK chain and IK chain. So first we're going to copy the FK chain to that intermediate chain. So select the FK bone first, then the corresponding intermediate, and we're going to copy rotation. Just go all the way down the line here. Now we want to make this nicer because we're going to have a lot of things going on here. We're going to call this FK. So we have an FK copy rotation constraint. Control C. We're going to paste that into our name field all the way back. This is going to help with our organization here. So right now you can see if I rotate any of these bones, these are going to also rotate with them. It looks broken at the moment, and that's because our stretch controls aren't set up yet, but it is actually working with our FK bones. So that's what we want. Alright, next what we want to do is we want to add a copy rotation from our IK to our intermediate. So copy rotation, same order. Copy the rotation from IK to that bone. And this is where our switch is going to come into place here. Let's change the name of these to the IK copy rotations. So IK, Control C, paste them all back. Now the way the IK or the our bone constraint stack works here is first it's going to copy the first constraint in the stack will evaluate, and then the next one will evaluate on top of that. So in this case it's going to copy the rotation of the FK chain, but because we have another copy rotation right underneath it, it's basically going to immediately override the FK copy rotation with the IK. So what we need to do is actually add a switch so we can turn off this IK constraint. So basically it's going to always copy the FK, and if the IK is on, it's just going to override it and basically overwrite it. And if it's off, or influence is all the way off, it will only copy the FK, and it'll basically just skip that constraint altogether. And we can do this with a custom property. And I'm going to put that FK and IK switch on our control IK. So let's go to bone properties here. Let's go down and find our custom properties. Let's put add, and then it's given us one called prop by default. Let's edit this and call this FK/IK. Now I typically You can see the min and max values here are going to be 0 to 0 and 1 1, and that's going to work to switch our constraint on and off, because it goes, the influence goes from 0.0 to 1. Get back in here, look at our oops, and I just lost that because I didn't finish that up. Anyways, fk/ik. So our min and max is going to equal our influence slider, but then we can actually set what the default value is going to be, and I typically like to use fk as my default. You can put, I'm going to put 0.0, but you could put 1.1 if you always want to have your fk on by default. So now we just kind of click OK, and you can see if I select any other bones, there's not a property slider, but if I select the IK control bone, there is now a new IK FK slider in the properties panel. So what we need to do is actually copy this data path temporarily, and then we are going to go to our constraint, and we're going to add a driver, and I'll show you how to quickly make up a driver setup here. I'm going to actually do plus for this default scene and call this drivers, so I can switch back and forth. Oh, I must have already done that. I think I've already done that before. Let me just switch to my drivers panel here. But that's basically how you do that. I've got the graph editor open here, and this is switch to drivers. I'm going to add a driver to, I added that driver to the influence of the IK copy rotation constraint, and we just need to configure it. Let me make sure that in my buffer I've got this copy data path, and you just click on that field and you can insert keyframes, add drivers or whatever. What we need here now is our data path to this slider. Get back to our, select that first bone in the intermediate chain with our driver on it, select it in here. You can use scripted expression, and it will be equal to var, and our variable is not going to be a transform channel, it's going to be the single property from our armature first, and we're going to copy that data path that we copied earlier right here. Just Control V to paste that in there. Let's just update the dependencies here, and you can see that that influence immediately went down to 0 here. So if I select this and put it to 1, and then we recheck it, it's going to be at 1. Put it back down to 0, and so forth. So when its influence is on, it's going to copy the rotations from FK chain and then override this at 1, or just ignore it when it's at 0. Let me go back to our regular default view here. Luckily we don't have to do this multiple times. All we need to do is click on this field here and copy that driver, and now we just need to paste it all the way down into our copy rotation IK constraints. Paste. Oops. Paste a driver. And paste our driver. Now let's check to see if that works. It's on FK mode now, so if we're moving our IK around, this intermediate chain will not be moving. But I can start manipulating our FK bones here. Now let's switch it to IK, and you can see that it's going to move with that one, but it will not move with our FK. Pretty simple. Alright, now I know this looked broken for a while here, and the reason for that is we haven't added our, we've only been copying our rotations from each one of these chains and not the locations, and we need to do that. And the reason I separated that out is because we're going to actually use our tweak parents to do that, and we're going to transfer that over. So that will be, let me turn on tweak parent and just do FK chain. I believe that's FK chain, yes. Alright. Basically what I want to do is instead of having copy rotation constraints, we're going to add copy locations to the FK and IK chains. So I want this parent bone to copy this main FK arm bone here. It's location in space. We're going to do copy location. Whoops, I need to go the other way around. I want to copy this to this one. So copy location, and it's going to pop up there. So select the next one in the chain, copy location. We're just going to work our way down. Now the only difference is going to be at the end here. By default, if I select this and let's look at our copy location constraints, by default it's going to copy the head position of the bone we have selected, but we can also slide that to the tail position if we want from here. We do need this one at the head, so we're going to copy this one to the tail. By default it's just going to go to head. We'll just put that slider there, and now we've got our tweak parent out at the end of that bone. Alright. Now, because we parented our other actual controls to those tweak parents, they are going to copy that location first, and now we'll be able to add be able to manipulate those controls to change their location. So let me just undo this here real quick, because we need to do one thing first. We need to do this once again. Well, before I do that, let's call this FK, just to stay organized here. This is our FK copy location. Alright, now that those are named, now we need to just reverse it and copy the location of the IK chain. Copy location. And once again, we're just going to use this bone and copy that location to that, but we need to change it to the tail position rather than the head. And we can rename this IK. Paste that name all the way back. Alright. Now, we don't have to actually make that driver, because we've already made it once here. We just can copy that driver from this other, from our intermediate bones here. So let's select one of these and just copy the influence driver here, just to make sure that it's active. And now, we just deselect all these bones just so that our parent is here. Just paste that driver. Oops. Paste that driver in that value, in the IK value here. So it's not really that bad. There's a lot going on, but if you just follow the functionality back from the root here, you know, it's actually not that difficult to set this up. So now we should have fully functioning locations on our parents to our controls. One final step. Now that we've got a location to work from, now we can have that bone copy the location and the rotation, and then stretch to the next bone in the chain. So when we manipulate our controls here, it'll stretch up to it, and then it's going to copy the location of that and stretch to the next one, and so on and so forth. Well, let's get this. Let's just turn on the controls themselves and our intermediate bones. So we want to copy the location of this one to our intermediate bone. Copy location, it'll pop up there, and then we need to stretch this bone to this next one. So we'll stretch to, copy the location, or copy the location in here. It'll pop up, and then copy or stretch to this one. So basically, you're just don't get too far ahead here. it's going to copy the rotation of IK and FK, and then it's going to copy the location of those tweak bones first, and then it's going to stretch to the next bone in the down the line here. So let's just add, oops, select them in the right order here, copy location, and then stretch to this one. Copy the location, stretch to that one. Where am I stretch to? Alright. Stretch to, copy location, and one more stretch to, and we should be good. Now let's see what all our hard work has gotten us. We can grab that and stretch it, and all that's going to work on top of our FK and IK, whatever our IK and FK positions are. One more thing to make this ultra cool is we are going to add a transformation constraint, so we can copy the Y rotation. If I take R, Y, Y, if we rotate this and Y, we can actually drive the Y rotation of each one of these segments here. So this won't be too difficult to add. Let's just add our transformation constraint, and I'm going to do the same thing, the same trick with the other one by duplicating that transformation constraint across. I'm going to do extrapolate rotation to rotation, local space to local space, and we want Y to Y, so we only need a value in Y and Y. If I type R, Y, Y now, you can see that we can change our the twist on that bone. One thing I want to do before I get too far is, since we're only using one axis, to have this as a quaternion is actually kind of a little bit nuts, I guess. And we only want to rotate it on its y-axis, so we can actually switch this to XYZ Euler. Unfortunately, copy attributes doesn't have a way to copy that across, so I'm just going to go through and select every one of these controls and go switch it over to XYZ Euler by hand here. Because one other thing we're going to have this bone do is we're going to have this bone copy its scale, but only in the X and Z. So we're not, it's already stretching in the Y, so that would actually be extraneous and probably break things. So we're just going to copy the local X and Z scales to this bone, and we can just do that with a simple copy copy scale constraint. But we're going to make sure it's at local space and only in Z and X. Alright, now I'm going to use my copy selected constraints trick here to copy that all to the other bones. Copy protected, whoops, I never did actually finish this off either. I switched all those to Euler, and I never copied all my protected constraints. Let's do copy protected transforms, and now all these are set up so the animator can only rotate on one axis, only scale on two axes, and of course you can set the location anywhere. Let me see, I do have my transformation constraint and copy scale. Did I add that to all these? Nope. You select these again, Control C, copy selected constraints. We want the transformation and copy scale constraints copied all the way across. And one other thing we need to do is actually change the order of these constraints here. We want the stretch to be last, so we're going to pop this transformation and copy scale up above that. So it'll be FK, IK, then it's going to copy the location and do the transformation and copy scale and then stretch to. So now we can do that. Select the next bone. We want to change that order as well. So stretch to is last, but we also need to change the name of this bone to tweak 2, and this one we can just go tweak 2. That's the one that's going to be driving the second bone in the chain. RR. You see that works, and we can scale it, and it's working. Let's go to this next one. Just drop some of these down. Oh, one other thing I never did when I added my stretch to, what we would like to have is this volume preservation. We'd like to check that to none. So as we're going through there, I'm going to try to remember to check that volume preservation to none. It's going to give us a better result. Let me select this again. I've got our transformation is set to control tweak 2, and I want to set our stretch to none. Alright. So this one needs to be below. Let's move our stretch to below and none, and our transformation needs to be the third one in the chain here. So 3. Move these above. Stretch 2 to none. Copy scale needs to be, what are we on, 4 here? Control tweak 4. Control tweak 4. I know this is exciting. Just switching all these. Oops, what did I do here? I gotta get my stretch to the bottom and turn off volume preservation, and we must be at number 5. Copy scale number 5 for tweak. Should just be one last one here. I want to move stretch 2 to the bottom, volume to none, and this one should be 6. We can just double check everything, make sure that we've got all our naming right here. Looks a little bit more complicated than it was, so our locations are working right. This N isn't actually going to do anything. This one will rotate that bone on the Y, RYY, and scale X, scale Z, grab it, rotate it, scale it, we'll grab it, rotate it, and scale it. I like to check everything, make sure that I don't have any problems. And that is probably the hardest part of the whole rig right here. Like I said, I know that there's a lot going on there, but it wasn't too bad, I'm sure. I know I'm getting over 40 minutes for this last bit, but I do want to try to finish this up here. Actually, there's going to be a few more things that I'm going to need to go over anyways, as far as getting the deformations set up and some other setting up some other controls and control shapes and axis locks and things like that. So I will do part 3. Till then, good luck.